Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L, and now let's talk My Hero Academia Chapter 208. The results of the fourth round. I believe the chapter title was something like that. Anyway, hey everyone, in case you're a long-time follower of the channel, not just the Hero Academia side of things, very quick note, and this is especially if you notice that something sounds different, I am currently on the road. Because of that, my setup is kind of different, and because of that, things are going to either be looking kind of different or they're going to be sounding kind of different, and that's also part of the reason why videos are delayed if you're waiting for other things. Where I'm at right now, the internet connection is really slow, and it's taking me quite a while to get everything in order to put it up on the YouTube channel. Anyway, not the point. Let's just get into the chapter. 208. This is a pretty interesting chapter in terms of the reaction that people are having online, and it's more in terms of like the discussion is kind of evolving around the chapter, specifically whether or not Bakugo has changed or what is different about Bakugo compared to the other people who are fighting in this mock battle, and those are all really cool discussions, and I really want to get to those, so we're going to get into those towards the end of the video, whereas for the beginning part, what I kind of just want to do first is talk about a bit about the chapter construction, and also just how this chapter, or how this battle in particular, works in comparison to the other battles when it comes to showing off characters. Because showing off characters is kind of the name of the game for, I guess, all these little battles that we're having, pretty much. It's a big time for Class 1B. So structure-wise, I think Chapter 208 ends up being very, very fast-paced, and I think the best page that kind of just shows how that influences the construction of the panels, and I can't show you guys it because I got to be a little bit more careful with what pictures I'm using, but if you're on the manga stream translation, if you go to page 13, it's specifically the page where you have Seiro, I guess, narrating or analyzing the situation with Tokage and talking about the entire situation, and then it's the page that has the bomb taped to one of Tokage's pieces going up towards her. This page is just really interesting because you see that there's quite a little bit happening, and it's hard to quantify pacing. But these are one of the moments where if you're not paying attention to the chapter, you'll kind of miss on little details. So in page 13 in particular, you had the sequence where you see Tokage and a bomb going up to her, and the next time you see Tokage, she's running away from a scorch mark. But if you look around in the panel of Seiro right above her, you see that there was a boom in the distance. What you're having here is you're having these little details in the background telling you that there has been some progression in the situation, while you have a character taking the major focus of the particular panel. So it was really interesting. It's a really interesting kind of build to how, I guess, the author showed what was going on in the situation, and it's just really interesting to see these little tricks, right? Because the chapter ends up feeling really fast, but because of that, we end up by the end of it knowing the results. And it's kind of neat to see this happening here, although I am wondering if the author kind of rushed this. And I'm just saying that because the previous fight with the Todoroki stuff felt like it was a little bit slower, and that might be more because Todoroki was having his full-on identity crisis again. And you know, that always slows things down when characters are being introspective. It was just interesting to see it here. Now, one of the unfortunate things I think going through this chapter is that it doesn't really feel like it was a chapter that was showing off Class 1B as much as it did in the other fights. I think because a lot of the chapter is Bakugo running around, and the thing is, the Bakugo panels look amazing. It's just I think everyone else kind of got shafted for Bakugo. And to just kind of illustrate that, or to just kind of drive that point home, counting up the chapter's pages, there's about 11 pages that have Bakugo inside of them, and of those 11 pages, 8 pages have a principal panel with Bakugo being one of the main focuses of the panel. To say that the chapter is focused on Bakugo is kind of an understatement, and that's the unfortunate thing, because one thing that's been really cool, at least in terms of the feeling of it with the other chapters, has been that Class 1B has been getting some pretty good representation. Mind you, we're not saying that they're not getting representation, but Bakugo takes up quite a bit of the screen time, and he is a big presence. Also, we know Bakugo is a very popular character, so when I'm seeing Bakugo in this chapter, while he is being super impressive, he is taking up a lot of the time, and that's kind of unfortunate for the other characters. Especially Class 1B. In this chapter, Class 1B just turns into the clowns pretty much, because they're all just... Everyone is a peon, and Bakugo is this giant storm that everyone's trying to navigate. And it's just... Once that starts happening, Class 1B... they lose a lot of their characterization. Like, at the end of the day, there's not much you can say about characters who are in fight or flight mode. And, you know, there's not much you can kind of draw from their characters, given, I guess, what you're seeing them doing when they're running away from Bakugo. Mind you, in the grand scheme of things, this is still better than nothing. This is still relatively good. Last week's chapter was good enough when it came to like establishing some things for the minor characters. These chapters are still continuing a trend of there's one character that's always going to be shafted. In this time, I think maybe two people on both sides of the teams. I think Sugarman and also the welding boy Awase, I think his name was. I think they end up getting relatively shafted just because they got the least screen time overall. So at the end of the day, it's an issue of Bakugo is this big presence, and it's just kind of unfortunate that the other characters have to compete for screen time with him. Among other standouts, however, for this chapter, I definitely think Zero did really well. It's Bakugo first, then there's Zero in terms of giving you something worthwhile, because Zero's the one who's giving us the full analysis of Tokage's quirk. That is a worthwhile contribution, you know, relatively in terms of this whole thing. From there, who else does relatively well? It's hard. Maybe Tokage. Tokage is also on she's on the freak out side, so that kind of takes away points. Jiro was also worthwhile here, but she didn't contribute to the same degree that Zero does to the whole chapter's information dump, right? She's just there and she helps the whole situation in the same way that Sugarman helps the situation. So overall, coming out of this chapter, I just I'm slightly disappointed just because it seems like the characters, I wish that they had a little bit more time. Heck, I would have been okay if this got extended into chapter 209, but I do also appreciate going through things quickly. So I end up just bittersweet. It's a kind of bittersweet feeling. I'm happy that we got through it quickly. I feel sad that the characters didn't get a bit more screen time, and it was Bakugo principally. Moving on from there, though, and now shifting into the full-on Bakugo discussion, a lot of people are talking about whether or not Bakugo has changed, and honestly, I think there's a lot that you can see here that can be admired. And I think it's really funny because like last week, I remember one of the main thoughts that I was having with Bakugo is that this is the guy who honestly could be doing everything right, and it's just an issue of the readers. We don't know if he knows what he's doing. And as it turned out, this week he did know what he was doing. We got the flashback that he gave everyone grenades. We have this general idea of how he was going about this, and we see what it effectively was. Like we talked about it last week, Bakugo is super competent. If you let him be super competent, he's probably gonna win. He is the one guy that could just brute force through this. And this week we have that idea still there, because when you look at it, it's Bakugo leading the charge. But here are the nice little nuances. Bakugo has accepted that he will work with people. Bakugo has accepted that people can be useful. What you ultimately saw here was this kind of weird compromise of Bakugo charging ahead and then his entire team making sure he is allowed to charge ahead. Mind you, Bakugo also provides some support here and there, which is also really good. So for that whole question about whether or not Bakugo has changed, I think this is a really good change, and a change that is still in line with Bakugo's character. The kid went in thinking he's going to win, and it's still largely him pushing that win in. But now he's turned in from a kid who just goes solo and tries to do everything by himself to a kind of overlord who still goes and tries to do things, but now he has his peons that he can manipulate into different positions. And that's honestly really funny. That's really cool. And I think Ochako continues to be the Bakugo whisperer when she says that Bakugo trusts his group a little bit more. And I think that's something that we can't just forget here. The big thing here is that Bakugo entirely relied on his teammates to be able to pick up the slack and help him out when he needed. And the best shot of that really was Sugarman breaking up Bakugo when he got caught in the weldings, because I thought, man, that weld sticks. He's not getting out of that easily. He's done. Did Bakugo just get trapped? And then no, you have Sugarman coming in there and helping him out. That was pretty much the quintessential moment for how Bakugo could operate in a team, and it feels really good. You have your anchor, so now you just have to make sure you play support for that one anchor, and he will carry you through. And I like that dynamic. This is a different kind of teamwork. You don't need to have the teamwork where everyone needs to be doing something absolutely useful. And now we can play comparisons, because now we're seeing some leaders coming out of these groups, right? We have Bakugo in this group, Ida in Todoroki's group, we had Tsuyu in the first group, and we had Momo in the second group. In Bakugo's group, what you ultimately see here is that you need a leader. Well, it's hard when you start comparing where exactly do things fail. Bakugo's guys all acted appropriately. They all acted with a lot of competence. So the main thing I take away from that is this was an issue where everyone knew what they had to do, and that was support Bakugo. And because they had such a simple goal, it was easier for them to bring out their talents. And I compare it to like the Momo situation. Momo got separated from her group very quickly, and their plan was reliant on maybe Momo having some complex ideas. So what I ultimately see here is, because I did see people comparing it to Momo in that they had dead weights pretty much in the form of Hagakure and Aoyama. But I think about it, and it's just Bakugo has a certain level of simplicity that works, right? Like, we know Bakugo, he sees that goal and he's going for it. And it's easy for everyone else to rally around the simple idea of, yes, let's just all help Bakugo. But you compare it to Momo, and Momo is like running a lot of things through her head. Because of that, she doesn't have the easy, simple, go to point A from point B kind of mentality. It's a lot more complex and nuanced. I do think that if Aoyama and Toru ended up in Bakugo's team, Bakugo still probably would have won, because he still would have charged ahead, and all he would have needed was maybe Aoyama blasting a building out of his way, right? It's kind of unfair to compare Bakugo and Momo, because between the two of them, Bakugo is a natural combat genius, right? And that's one of the big things that come out of here. You see the way Bakugo is moving in this chapter, Bakugo continues to be a genius. And it's interesting to see the way that Bakugo has been portrayed by the author of this manga. And it's also kind of cool. But anyway, overall, my biggest gripe with the chapter really is just this feeling of sadness that the other characters didn't get more time. But it's overall, I think, a good chapter. And it seems that Bakugo, he's in a point where he can afford to be himself, with some minor adjustments, which are really just great quality of life things. And I think that's pretty cool. With Bakugo, we might be moving into a situation where you can't criticize the guy if he's actually getting results. It's one of those situations where the character is strong enough to get his way. And that's always interesting to see. I think there will be an interesting contrast when we see how Izuku fights. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much it for me. I gotta run. So, till next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.